deals with the order of operations. This is where BEDMAS comes together and is now complete in your repertoire. So, before we go any further, let's take a look at our definitions. We've got order of operations. So, BEDMAS is brackets first, then the exponents, which is what we're dealing with now. Then you do division and multiplication in order from left to right. And then we've got adding and subtracting in order from left to right. So that is review. It's just that we're adding the exponent piece into it now finally. Next definition is that a coefficient is a number that multiplies an expression. So for example, in this expression here, -5 times 4 squared, the coefficient is what sits in front, and that's the -5. So we've got a power 4 squared, and then it's being multiplied by -5. So that -5 is called a coefficient. It sits in front of another expression, and then it's multiplied together. So, working example number 1, determine the product of a power, evaluate. Well, if we look at this, this means it's 3 times 2 to the power of 4. And this 3 is your coefficient as indicated here. So method 1, use repeated multiplication. Well, we can certainly do that. What this means, it's 3 times 2 to the power of 4, which is 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So the coefficient just sticks in front of the repeated multiplication that you can use for your power. It's really nothing too mind-blowing that we've added into this. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 3 gives you an answer of 48. Now, using the order of operations, we don't have to necessarily break this down into repeated multiplication. Same question. This means 3 times 2 to the power of 4. BEDMAS, you deal with brackets first. Well, the only brackets here is to indicate that 2 is your base, so that's not an actual operation, so we can skip the brackets part of it. Exponents comes next. Well, the exponent here is 4, so we need to evaluate this power. 2 to the 4th, if you plug it in on your calculator, it gives you an answer of 16. So this becomes 3 times 16. Then, based on BEDMAS, we have no brackets, we're done with our exponents. Multiplying and dividing comes next. Well, we have a multiply here, so then we can multiply. So 3 times 16 will give you that same answer of 48. So it's a little less writing as long as you rely on BEDMAS. And of course, you can use a calculator. Clear it 3 times and then enter in your power of 2 to the power of 4, and it'll give you a 48 as the solution. Part B. Same concept, we're just introducing some negatives in here. The -3 is again our coefficient, and then the rest of it is a power. So this means 3 times -5 squared. And we can evaluate that -5 squared. -5 times -5 is 25. Negative times the negative becomes positive, so we don't have to worry about the negative on that part of it anymore. But the negative is still here on the coefficient. So then we're left with -3 times 25. Well, 3 times 25 gives you 75. The negative times the positive, well, that gives you a negative. So it's a -75. So that's the solution. One more. -4 to the power of 4. When you see this, it's a little bit tricky. You know from previous section here that this negative is not part of the power itself. It's not included in brackets, so it's not part of your base. So what it actually means is there's a -1. The 1 is just kind of assumed. So it's -1 times the power of 4 to the 4. So in actual fact, that negative is a coefficient, and it's the coefficient -1. So -1 times 4 to the 4th power. Well, 4 to the 4th power is 256. It's 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Then you've got your coefficient, so you multiply that in and you end up with -256 as your solution. So be aware of that. We know that it's not part of the base of your exponent, so it must then be a coefficient that is dealt with after the fact. So evaluate your power, then multiply it by -1 to give you that -256. All right, show you know, give it a go.